Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shatterproof Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Reeb, and today we have an incredibly impactful guest joining us, Kris White, the founder of Iconic Life. Kris is a dynamic leader who's on a mission to help entrepreneurs live to their fullest potential. He's not only a guest, he's a friend of mine. I'm so happy to have him on here so we can talk about not only Iconic Life, but other successful businesses that he's built. Kris, welcome to the show.
Scott, thank you for having me, brother. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited because we always have fun when we're together and have interesting conversations. So we get to now share that with everyone else. So it's cool to have you. Obviously, you've got this cool logo behind you that's on fire. So tell us a little bit about Iconic Life. Let's just start with that, and then we can kind of fill in some details later.
You know, I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 2, and my dad ended up going from Southern Virginia to Northern Virginia over the course of me being 5 to 8 years old. And then every other weekend, I started traveling on a Trailways bus at 11 to go see Dad. And the Trailways bus was about a 3.5, 4-hour ride. It was always kind of, and I'm young. And so I would look at Conan the Barbarian magazines and, try to stop from being killed from the people that sat in the back that were rude and whatnot. But being in Southern Virginia, which was a lot more rural, and then going to the capital of the nation, and it was much faster. People are much more informed. I got a lot of both worlds. And this idea of opportunity, I didn't realize at the time as a young person, I had a lot of opportunity that other people didn't have, even though it came out of weird situations. And, I started putting myself out there. I played sports and I was decent at it. And I was in drama and didn't have a problem going up to a girl and asking her out. And, any friend group that I could be a part of, I didn't care who they were. I just wanted to get to know them, wanted to be friends with everybody. And, I go to college and I get out and I don't want to do computer science. So I decide at 24 years old to start a business, which I had zero reason to do. Like, I knew nothing about anything about the industry I was getting into. I knew nothing about how to run a business, nada. But those experiences of playing sports and drawing art and being in drama and musicals and all this kind of stuff, and getting no's from girls and getting yeses gave me the wherewithal to give myself a chance. And the flame that is moving inside of the O in Iconic, to me, is the flame that all of us have inside of us. And I found that owning a business, because I'm in construction, one of my companies is construction, a lot of the young men that would come and work for me had really disadvantaged youths. And so I spent a lot of time building those guys up to believe in themselves so that I didn't have to go do all the work or all the hard parts of the job.
Yeah.
And then I started realizing that I was pretty good at fanning that flame inside of people and getting them to take a chance on themselves. So the idea of building an iconic life is that everybody has a chance to not only build one, but to define what that looks like. And where I started to become disheartened was I would say that to people and find out that we don't all have the same core values. Some people aren't very interested in stretching themselves. Some people aren't very interested in becoming a better version of who they are. And this, being an entrepreneur, I don't have a choice or I won't be one for very long. And that's when I started saying, well, if I get to choose who I hang out around, I'm going to create an entire business around the idea that if you believe that you have a seed of greatness inside of you that can grow, then we at least have the potential to have a cool conversation.
For sure. Yeah. And that's one of our common core beliefs, is that seed of greatness was put in us by our Creator. It doesn't happen by accident, and we're all children of God and created in His image. And because of that, you can go do all these things. It's just, you have to kind of get over yourself sometimes.
That took only about 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, I'm
still working at it.
I'm a 28-year overnight success. I know we've had several discussions in the past about 75 hard.
Sure.
You and I both have done that, and it was a great experience for me, but it was a really great experience for you and your team. And I think it's an interesting story, and I think other people could learn from that. Would you mind sharing about that?
Sure. So, I had joined at the time, a very small mastermind with an influencer that was growing it. And I remember paying to be at the highest level. It was about $30K a year just for the membership, and then the flights and food. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. Again, I pulled a Kris Whitehead. I didn't realize I was going to be six figures. Um, but as that was growing, and I started flying down there, they ended up taking photos of us. And I've always been a really athletic guy, or so I thought.
Yeah.
And I end up looking at the pictures on social media, and I go, "Who's the fat guy?"
Yeah.
And it was a picture taken from the back, and it was this roll on the back of my neck. And I was like, man, Robin is 110 pounds wet.
She
And
is tiny.
and I realized I was getting close to 265 pounds. And it was a lot of sitting. Like, I went from working in the field to working in the office, and I didn't continue to work out because I was stressed out. So,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, it was pure vanity that set me on that path.
Yeah.
But then I heard about this thing called 75 Hard, and most people have heard about it. And it's 2 workouts a day and no alcohol for 75 days. And you got to eat a restricted diet of some sort. You have to read personal development books. You have to take a selfie. And I was like, I can do all of that's doable. And because of the mastermind that I joined, it was all about marketing. It was all about getting your message out there. And I already had a lot of experience with that. So I decided to do 75 Hard in November in New England. November 16th was a start date, because one of the exercises is an outside exercise.
Yeah.
And I realized that if I put on a 40-pound weight vest and walked around in the snow, that I would definitely feel the pain. I also did it on November 16th, because I knew that I would hit Thanksgiving, I would hit Christmas, I would hit New Year's Eve, I would hit all these major holidays that I would see all of this food and drinking going on, but I couldn't partake. So again, make it hard. And I wanted to do that as a reset.
Yeah.
And I also decided to start a Facebook group for free. Like, I don't charge anybody anything, but it's like, hey, come along, and I'll do live videos every day. And that's part of the marketing things that we teach people.
Sure.
And so I started doing these on my page, and cops ended up stopping me because I'm walking at 10:30 at night in the snow with the vest on in the neighborhood. And they're like, who are you? And I'm on live video. I'm like, I'll be right back, everybody. Hey, I'm just walking in the neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. But it really took traction. We ended up getting like a little less than 100 people that joined me for the exercise. And then lo and behold, Robin being, it's like Batman and Robin. She's like, wherever I go, she's coming too. She's like, I'll start going on these hikes with you. And so she starts going on these hikes in the mountains and up rocks, and I'm wearing a 40-pound weight vest and she's not. And the walk is only supposed to be 45 minutes.
That's right.
Scott, we were 45 minutes to an hour one way. And it's not like I'm going to leave this $80 vest on the ground and come get it one. So it's like, oh, crap, I got to travel with this thing home.
Mm-hmm.
But we would just laugh and have an amazing time. And then we started working out in the gym together, and we started doing pictures of couples working out together, and that took off. And it was just what I consider like the best of the best. It was a positive message. It was doing something as a family. Oh, by the way, our kids ended up joining in and doing 75, well, their version of it. But
75 soft.
Yeah, 75 soft. But a small following occurred. And the lesson that it really taught me, that I've heard it for years, and I've known it for a long time. But the speed of the group is determined by the speed of the leader.
Ooh.
And I realized that I had let off the gas, that I had started making excuses for myself for the same reasons that anybody would. And it was an awesome opportunity for me to reset that. And I've never gone, that was years ago, and I've never gone back since. I'm still at my ideal weight. I don't work out like a crazy man, but I do work out. And, now that I'm 51, I want to be able to feel like I'm in my late 30s for as long as I can. And I realize that it's a downward trend if I'm not constantly pushing against it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful for Andy Frisella and for 75 Hard. And I've given copies. I bought 25 copies of his book immediately and just started sending it to people and giving it to people when they come in the office. They never come back. So I hope they read them. But it's just, if one man can get millions of people to do something, what if we all start just spreading that message out there? And
Yeah.
I've made tons of friends from it. I've had business come from it. And most importantly, it's held me to a standard so that I don't fall into hypocrisy, right? You can't stand for something and say that you stand for something and put videos out there. And then all of a sudden 75 days is over. I'll just go back to my gluttonous lifestyle.
Oh, you
So
can.
well, you can, but I don't want to. It kind of defeats the friggin' purpose of doing it to begin with, you know? It's the same thing with big pharma. Like, mom raised me to believe in holistic medicine.
Oh,
And so I believe that, you know, if we do something good, we should continue to do something good. I don't want to take a diet pill. I tried Hydroxycut one time, and
yeah.
all I got was a caffeine headache when I got off of it.
Yeah. No,
But
back
it
in
was
the
a
day
cool time, man.
back when they had Ephedra, that Metabolife, that stuff would really work.
When I was 35, I had like 8-pack abs and was like super buff.
Yeah.
I was working out 6 days a week, and whatever GNC had for like testosterone supplements and nitrous oxide for your veins,
Yeah.
I found out 15 years later when I started working out again, they don't have that stuff anymore. It's
No.
the FDA doesn't allow it on the marketplace.
No, there's no telling what it did to our bodies, but yeah, there
Nope.
used to be cool stuff. Well, I think that's a great story, and you didn't even, and many of your employees also joined in
Yep.
with you. And so it's just, I mean, it just shows the power of influence that by making a decision to change your circumstance because you didn't like how you looked, all these other people have now started that journey, and some of them will finish it, some won't. But all of them are further than they were before. It's just, I think people don't understand how much power they have if they'll make a decision in a public way, like you did, and like we've seen we have other friends that have done that too. I think it's just so powerful. I commend you for it.
Thanks.
And it kind of leads me to an earlier conversation we had. You know, we are at November 8th of 2024. I don't normally like to date the shows, but that's where we are. It's kind of an important week. We had a big election here in the U.S. You and I are both happy with how it went. A lot of people aren't, but more importantly than all of that is that leading up to that election, some really powerful people who don't normally play in the politics world were coming out and talking about how important this election was and who they were supporting and why.
Yeah.
Right. And we were talking about that. And I think it's a very similar thing, like that influence they have. It can be used for good, or it can be used for bad. And it was so powerful, I think, to see some people like Dana White who have a huge brand to protect.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, he's got all the money he could ever need, but he's built this really great brand, and you know, almost half the country didn't agree with his position, but he
you can end up totally Alex Jonesing yourself if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you end up, you know, Alex Jones doing this InfoWars stuff, and yeah, he's definitely tinfoil hattish, but it definitely appeals to a certain crowd.
Yeah.
But when he came out about Columbine and started talking about it, just was untrue. And so not that anything that these guys said was untrue, but you put yourself on the line in such a huge way, and then when you're on top of that pile, it's easy to get clicked off if you do something that is considered incorrect by the masses.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a lot of guts for these guys to do what they've done.
Yeah, and then Joe Rogan, and just having, inviting President Trump and Vice President-elect Vance to come on the show and to spend all those hours with them and give them the opportunity to be authentic and be real, like everyone is on that show. And then at the last hour to actually endorse President Trump. It's just, I think it had a huge effect on me. I've been trying to be a little more out there with what I believe. I think we've talked about that too. But man, they took it to the next level. And yeah, I've got a wife that's very hesitant about me when I'm doing those things. Like, hey, be careful. like Michael Jordan used to always say, both Republicans, Democrats buy Nikes. So
Yes.
he was always careful. But it's like if we won't stand up and say what we believe when we think it's right, and this is the right thing to do, who's going to do it?
Well, here's how I look at it, man. And for better or for worse, it's how I look at it. So you don't have to agree with it. But Christianity used to be such a small thing that they had to gather in caves in people's homes. They created songs to teach the principles of what was like the 12 days of Christmas is not a kid's song. It's talking about who the apostles are. Christ is the partridge in the pear tree. It was in code.
Yeah.
And there also, it admonishes us in the Bible that at some point you have to stand up for what you believe in. And it's easy to stand up for what you believe in when the majority agree with you. It takes a lot of guts to stand up for what you believe in when you have a lot to lose from it. And yes, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be intelligent. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be polite. Like, the best part about that entire week of Joe Rogan, yes, he was making fun of things that were worthy of being made fun of, but he was never rude. He even said, "I'm more than happy to have Kamala Harris here." She only was willing to do a 45-minute interview if he flew to her. And he just realized, no, I need 3 hours with someone for a reason. It's around the second hour is when they get real.
Yeah.
And so I believe that if you put yourself out there in a way that isn't meant to divide people, but at the same time you stand for what you stand for, and you do, I look at it as I would invite almost anyone into my home. Robin wouldn't.
Right.
She's a little bit more protective than I am, but I invite almost anyone into my home. But there are rules. And I think being on social media and being a mature, educated person on social media, when you own a business, there is a way that you conduct yourself. And if someone wants to come and say really hateful or divisive things to me, it's not what they're doing. It's how I choose to respond to it.
Oh, that's right.
And that's how I've chosen to do business. I mean, in 26 years of business, Scott, I'm sure I've been in 26, you've been in 28. Is that right?
That's right.
I probably maybe 10 or 12 clients. You have more clients than I do. I do bigger projects probably. But I probably had 12 people in my entire career that were not my ideal client and that I needed to get away from. And about 8 of them, I just took it. I just took it and took it and took it. And about 4 of them I fired. And it's because we didn't have the same core values. And it never, by the way, firing the 4 felt just as horrible as the 8 that I endured. It never felt good. I never felt like, yes, I'm righteous and I'm a winner. No, I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I'd massively failed. I also felt like, in hindsight, I look back and I go, dude, the red flags were there, but you saw the dollar signs. You just bypassed it. You could just go build the thing. But I heard things that were not inside of my core values. And the same thing with inviting people into my home, and the same thing on social media. Look, this is what I believe in. I'm going to say it in kind of a funny way, but it's not meant to hurt your feelings. And if it does hurt your feelings, you're not the kind of person that I could hang out with anyway, because my goodness, if that is all it takes to get you upset, you've got things you need to work on. You need to join Iconic so we can teach you how to lighten your load a little bit.
Hey there, it's Scott Reeb, cutting in for a quick moment. If you're enjoying the podcast and finding value in our discussions, you're going to love the Access Plan. It's designed for entrepreneurs like you, offering unlimited legal advice without the worry of high hourly fees. With the Access Plan, you can get the legal support you need at a flat monthly rate so you can focus on growing your business with confidence. Head over to reeblaw.com/access to learn more and join Access now and get busy shatterproofing your business. Now let's get back to our amazing guest. Yeah, but you may get your feelings hurt. Yeah, when I've been able to fire a few clients, and it did feel good for me, not because in a gotcha kind of way, but to be in a place where I can make that decision of, I choose not to work with you because we're not a good fit. it felt good to me that I was able to do that, because early on, if you could fog a mirror, I was working with you. It didn't. There was no red rope policy at Reblaw. It was. Yeah.
Scott, I fired a client 3 months ago, and it was for well over $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd have asked Kris at like 24, 34, 42,
Mm-hmm.
$1 million plus, and like I didn't even have opportunities showing up at $1 million plus.
Right.
But over time, what I've learned is, number one, if it starts bad, you can't be enough of a hero to fix that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you're going to neglect your employees. You're going to neglect your wife. You're probably going to bring your problems home to her, me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on top of it, this is sucking all the juice out of you for why you began in the first place. They're not going to be happy if they don't start happy. And that's just when I really started paying attention more to the core value thing. Like, you got to just, if you give people enough time to talk, and they'll eventually tell you what their value system is. And so that's what I listen to now.
Yeah. Have you been in a spot where you've had to let a client go because of how they were treating your people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
I've had to let clients go because they thought that their money allowed them to be a small dictator.
Mm-hmm.
I've let clients go because they have said rude things about my employees only to me.
Mm-hmm.
I have let clients go because they have said things to my employees that they don't have a right to say.
Yep.
And I've let clients go because they literally are trying to figure out how to get something for nothing. Those are the main reasons that I've like if in a lawsuit kind of thing, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I've had clients have asked me to try to do things that are unethical.
You bet.
No. We pull permits. No, I'm not going to go to the electrician that I have a massive relationship with and try to knock his numbers down with a dangling of a carrot of a next job that you might have for him.
Right.
No, he has a family to protect. No, you don't get to call my people stupid to their face just because you're unhappy.
Yeah.
All of this is construction. It's not a car. It's not going to all look perfect the first day. We're not done yet.
No.
Give us the time and the space to do it. And by the way, these guys are craftsmen. Give them the opportunity to make it right. Just because you want to have a hissy fit, we didn't charge you enough money for you to talk to us that way.
No.
And it's not a one-time thing. It's usually like it's a habitual thing that starts happening. You're like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Here's your money.
Why is it important for a leader to do that?
I think number one, it sets the tone. Not only with the client, but most importantly, it sets it within the leader himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, we both have kids. The one thing that I figured out is they are watching. And so my employees, by how I choose to respond, either believe that I'm a strong leader or that I'm a weak leader. And that's the beginning of a rise or the beginning of a fall. And when my employees or my subs see me stand up for what is right, even if they're part of what is wrong, it's amazing how they start showing up exactly on time the next day.
Yep.
How they remember that they're supposed to put their invoices in by a certain day to get paid. I mean, all of the things start falling in line, just like they do at home.
Yeah.
When I clean up, Jonah cleans up.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Let's talk about resilience.
Sure.
I think that's kind of a theme at Iconic.
Yep.
Give me a story. Tell me about some adversity that you've had to overcome, either at Iconic or in your construction business.
At 33 years old, 32 years old, I was on top of the world, making more money than I had ever made. By 33, I started flipping homes because it had been talked about for several years, and I saw people doing it around my area in Virginia. I flipped my first one, and I ended up making like $24,000, and I didn't do the work. My guys did the work. They got to pick the materials. I walked to the lawyer's office. I got a stroke a check for 24 grand, walked out thinking that I'd stole it. Like, how did I just get a check for $24,000?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
By 34 years old, the economy started shifting pretty hard. And by by 35, I was holding on to properties that I could not sell because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac decided not to do first-time home buyer loan.
Mm-hmm.
I remember calling my dad. This is 2008. I remember calling Dad up and saying, "What do I do?" And he said, "Well, I think you can install solar on roofs. They pay like $70 a year, or satellite dishes like DirecTV."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just like,
No.
that doesn't, no. So I got my handy dandy resume. Look, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been doing this for 10 years. Somebody's going to be grateful to swoop up somebody like me. Well, this is what my resume looked like. Kris went to school. Kris had a job for a year and a half. And then Kris was basically unemployed for 10 years.
Yep.
So everywhere I dropped my resume, and I'm 35, and I'm talking New York, I just kept going up the East Coast. It was a young kid interviewing me, younger than me.
Yep.
And I thought I was perfect for an outside sales position. I never got calls back. And it's probably because I was 35 and they're looking to hire 22-year-old, 23-year-old guys.
Yeah.
So I end up landing here in New Hampshire and got a job at a top 50 builder as a sales guy. And it's what I should have done to begin with, Scott. I should have gone and gotten a job at a real company because I learned over the next 2 years everything that I didn't know.
Yeah.
But the adversity was that the cost of living here was 3 times what it is in Virginia.
Mm.
And I already came here without any money. Like I stayed until there was nothing left. And I had to start over. And the way that it felt, if anybody's ever seen the original Superman with Christopher Reeve, there's a time that he goes to the cave to give his power back. And then he goes to a shiny diner and he gives it back because of Lois Lane.
Yep.
But he goes to a shiny diner and these guys these 2 rednecks are starting a ruckus with a young lady. And so he stands up to him and he gets his ass walloped.
Mm-hmm.
Like first time he's ever had a bloody nose. And I remember him looking at it. That was my life up here. Like I had always at least gotten base hits and every once in a while a home run and grand slam. We won lots of games in the 9th inning, metaphorically for the business. I'll tell you this, the first year that I worked at that remodeling company as an employee, it was draw versus commission. Yeah. So I convinced him to pay me $6,000 a month because I had a ramp up period. And I didn't realize the paper I was signing said that we would do that until you reached a certain threshold. Well, the admin also didn't see that. So she paid me $6,000 the entire year.
Ooh.
The next year I come to my job and the owner comes to me and goes, "Hey, Kris, everything's cool, except you owe me $36,000. And I thought to myself, how the hell did I move 780 miles away from where I'm from, get a job, and I owe them? Because that was my life. I just owed everybody money.
Yeah.
And so everything I touched was not turning into gold. It was turning into poo-poo.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when the next round of personal development really began. I realized I was going to have to start climbing a hill. And I had a lot of hard lessons to learn. And, Robin coming into my life was a real blessing because people up here tend to speak their minds very openly, which I wasn't used to that being in Virginia, especially from ladies. And Robin got to have a, first row seat of Kris Whitehead, Mike Tyson fight. And she was like, you're losing, you don't duck. You don't prepare. Why do you keep doing this first? And I got so mad at her at first, but what I realized is that God was using her to show all my blind sides. And one by one, I started owning up to it, getting rid of the ego, and we started pulling ourselves out. And that was the real lesson, Scott. Like, you talk about shatterproofing someone's business, right? And the reason I respect you so much is I was the exact opposite of that. I was like, just send it, throw the mud against the barn door. It's going to work out. I'm Kris Whitehead. Everything will be fine. It was the dumbest way to live my life. But it didn't matter when I was in my 20s, did it? It didn't matter until I was about 35 years old and was like, I've got absolutely nothing but debt to show for this. And that's when I started wisening up. And that's what I respect so much about you, is because you're literally the beacon for, hey, it could all be gone in an instant, everybody. You got to do these things. And and not that people want to hear it, but boy, they sure are glad when they get that letter in the mail and they call you up and say, Scott, are we covered? And you go, yeah, that's what I do. And so that was my overcoming story, is just really starting to put first things first and have some real discipline.
That's a great story. I mean, it's just such an illustration of Zig Ziglar's be, do, have. You have to be before you can do, and you have to do before you can have. And so many of us just start doing.
Yep. Yep.
You've got to back up and start working on yourself. I also love that what you said, the speed of the leader determines the speed of the organization.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Man, that's
To
some
me,
gold.
That comes from the Marine Corps. And I was fortunate enough to have a gentleman who was one thing I've always done is sought out mentors.
Yeah.
My grandfather was an extremely amazing mentor to me, raised me. And so I was never too egotistical to find someone to help me. The problem is that pre-internet, it was really hard to find mentors, especially in business. For me, I was in rural Virginia.
Yeah.
So audiobooks became my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out then they had MP3s, and we went from cassettes to MP3s, and you literally go to the library and plug it into this little player and listen to it and then give it back, and they give you more. And it didn't cost a dime. It was like $1 a year to be a part of the library. And then all of a sudden we got our MP3 players, and I started downloading them, and now like it's proliferated. But my mentor told me that one time, and I was 22 years old, and he said, the speed of the group is determined by the speed of the leader. And I thought about that. And at the time, because I was a push on a pull door kind of guy, I was like, so what you're saying is maximum effort. Scott, I gave maximum effort for a good 15 years to end up with nothing because I wasn't being intelligent about how I did it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I survived it.
Yeah.
But I also saw people leapfrog me. And the whole reason that I started a business is because I wanted the freedom to live the life that I wanted. And what I became was a slave to my business.
Mm-hmm.
And what I eventually ended up doing was holding me accountable to a level in business that allowed me to rise. Then came after that, oh, you silly guy, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if I'm not taking care of so I was pretty tight on fitness. Pretty tight on business, finances. I was pretty tight on my faith. I was getting tighter and tighter about family. The fitness was always there because I was working in the field. And then one by one, pieces of these things started getting picked off. Not all of it, just pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the lack of discipline caught up to me. And it was just an awakening, just a realization, and the ego immediately went poof. Like, okay, this is your situation. Do you love making excuses for yourself, or do you love your family more? And I said, I love my family more. So I want to be a real boy. I don't want to be Pinocchio anymore. It's that simple.
Yeah. Well, Kris, this has been great stuff. Let me take you through some rapid fire questions. What's the one book that has had a huge impact on your leadership style?
You know, it's a trite answer, but the Bible truly is my go-to.
Okay.
And the reason being is I read incessantly, but the Bible especially, if you have ears, it is there for you to hear it.
What's a daily habit that keeps you focused and productive?
At the end of each day, I write down the 5 critical things that I need to accomplish tomorrow in order of importance. And I make sure that I accomplish 1 and 2 first thing out of the gate. If I get to 3, 4, and 5, and I usually do, it's a bonus. But as long as I accomplish those 2 things, it gives me the lifestyle and the freedom that I want for the other things that are important.
That's good stuff. I hope you guys wrote that down. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received as a business owner?
Not every client is a good client.
Cool. Well, Kris, I mean, this is no surprise, but it's been a great conversation. Every conversation with you is fun and always full of gold nuggets. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
You can go to iconicalliance.com. You can find me on Facebook at the Kris Whitehead, Instagram, Kris Whitehead Official. That's probably the best way.
Okay, cool. Well, everybody, we have the Shatterproof Leadership Retreat coming up in February. If you're interested in getting more information on that, there'll be a link in the show notes, but it's shatterproofsolutions.com/SLR 2025. We'd love to have you guys there. And then before we go, Kris, I want to offer you a blessing. May you be blessed in all your endeavors. May you be prosperous in every aspect of your life. May your path be enlightened with wisdom, health, and fulfillment. May your work not only achieve success, but create an unbreakable business legacy.
Same to you, brother. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this as much as I have, please like and subscribe to the show. Until next week, stay shatterproof. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. While I'm your host, Scott Reeb, and a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer, and this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship. The views expressed by my guests are their own and not mine, and they may not even reflect the opinion of the Shatterproof Entrepreneur podcast. So we strive to provide valuable and accurate content, but we make no representations as to the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of any information to your particular situation, and won't be liable for any errors or omissions for the application of them. Always consult a professional or in the respective area that we've discussed before making any personal or business decisions.